Hey, Sonia, we are
Hi.
live.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Hey, it's good to have you on my podcast finally. We've been talking about it for a while.
I know. We really needed to do this.
Yes. And the theme of the topic, of course, is can women have it all? And I'm excited to speak to you about it. You are quite a dynamic woman, very busy mom, wife, traveler, and your own company. So,
Yeah.
would love to start off and saying, do you think mom can have it all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there are days when I'm like, yes, we can do it, and we're jugglers, and we are superwoman, and we have superpower, and we are super moms, and we can have it all. But yes, there are certain days when you're like, I just need somebody else. Or there are days when you wish you could like clone yourself, and be in two places at the same time or stuff like that. So it is really a question that I think it boils down to the priorities, if you have it set right, planning, if you have some of those things right, if you have a good partner who trusts in you, who trusts what you want to do, then maybe you could have it all.
All right, so I'm totally going to unpack all of that. I hope at least in the next 20 to 30 minutes with the audience. I also know you travel a lot. Well,
Hmm.
you've lived in quite a few different countries
Hmm.
as well. So there's a lot of angles we can go with this
Hmm.
because how old is your son right now?
He's going to be 5.
So
Going to be
he's
5.
also at a crucial age where it's taking him to school and making decisions on his life also. So
Yeah.
how do you I know you said you plan, but when I ask a lot of moms about their planning, they try to plan and then they say it never goes to plan. How do you manage that when it never goes to plan moments?
You have to always think of a plan B. You have a plan, but then you have in the back of your head, you have another plan B. And I plan mostly for short term, especially, with having kid and going to school and having all the extracurriculars, all these extra stuff that comes along. It's like you have to plan, oh yeah, tomorrow is like this day, I need to send this to school. And those are the things that you have to plan. But however, like, big decisions, moving country, moving cities, those are things that I think you need to have a good sit down, a good chat with your partner about it, and just kind of think what is best for your child, and then see, take it from there.
But if I go back into time, did you ever think you're going to have a life like this?
No. I mean, it's really funny, but I always thought I always loved to travel. So I remember when I was looking for a job, I said I wanted a job where I could travel because I like to travel a lot. Finally, when it came to setting up my company, and I was working first as a sales and marketing as a freelancer, and I was working in the space where also it had to do with travel, it had to do with air miles, hotel miles, and it sounded very interesting, and I loved it, and I traveled also for that quite a bit. But then it was then the point of starting to focus on my own company. Honestly, I always thought I would just probably stay in Holland. Like, I didn't think I would move out of Holland or I would go somewhere else. But then COVID hit. And then when COVID came, we were like, maybe we needed to go somewhere else and try something else. And at that time, my son was still young, and we were like, okay, it's fine, and kids, when they're young, they can adopt anywhere. And I think they can make friends, and they can find a school, everything very easily. So, we moved to the Middle East, and we're like, okay, let's just see how it goes. We take it one step at a time. And eventually now, we're still there 2.5, almost 3 years later. Now we're thinking like, what's next? But it's still in planning.
Do you ever think that there's going to be a point where you want to just settle down in just one space now? Or do you feel like you could do a little bit more traveling and working and living a life in different places?
For me now, I could still do a little bit more. We both said we wanted Neil to be at a certain age before we say, okay, now we've got to settle down and make one place your home base. And I think for us, that age was like think when he was around 8 or 9 years old, like just before he's 10, maybe. And that, so I do still have some time of traveling.
So there's still a little bit more to go.
Yeah.
But how do you find your flow? So what is it how do you bring flexibility in your life? Okay, you're doing that traveling and you're raising a son 5 to 8. From my understanding, that's the time when they go into primary school as well.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you navigate that? Does he feel able to settle in as well? How do you navigate that?
Well, that's a tough question. How do I navigate that? I think it's like you have a chat with all members of your family, and you always like say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I think a lot of people also think like, oh, we're if you're the parent, the parents decide and the kids will just go along. In our case, I always say you have a child, but you've got to treat your child like an adult. So you've got to actually ask certain questions to your child as well and be like, what do you want? You stayed here, you stayed there. Where do you like it the best? And sometimes they'll give you clear answers. Sometimes that their answers are very like playful, or you can't take them seriously. But sometimes they'll be like, no, I actually like it here. I'm happy where I am, and I like my friend group, and those are things. And when you're like, okay, you don't want to take this away from your child, where how things are going. And if you're able to manage that with all other aspects, that you can run our business from anywhere around the world. And yeah, if we're able to do that, and if we're still having a good life in our terms, we're happy where we are, then why not?
So just to give audience perspective, because I know you have you're not just traditional Asian. And there's a reason why I'm asking you this to relate it back to the question. You're not traditionally Indian.
No.
You haven't lived up to the expectation Asian women are. So it'd be nice if you share a bit of background, your husband's background, and how that navigates also, because making this decision, you did break a lot of traditional way of raising your child.
I mean, look, I was born in India. I was raised in Curacao. After that, I moved to the Netherlands. I lived in the Netherlands for a very, very long time. For, I think, almost 12, 13 years, I've been in the Netherlands. My husband, born and brought up in India, no, he was raised in India. He moved to Curacao when he was pretty young. So that's where we met in Curacao. we kind of had to go through a lot of, well, not a lot of hurdles, but I mean to say, like, there were some obstacles in the way when we were dating. Anyways, but eventually we got married, and everyone's happy, we're all okay. And then now Neil, my son Neil is here. We For us, what is important is like, you have a family, it's just husband, wife, child. So it's like when you want to make a decision, sometimes I know a lot of traditional Asian people will take a lot of opinions from their parents or, extended family. For us, I think is like when you're a young family, when you're just starting, I think you really have to focus on you, your husband, your child, or the other way around. It's literally just that. And you just got to make sure and see what is best for you guys, as this thing. Of course, you have to always also think like, oh yeah, but my parents here, my parents are there. But take the opinion, but at the end of the day, just see what is right for your direct family.
You're speaking about that, and I think about the role of a woman in our Asian society as a whole. And I know I struggled with it. I'm not sure if you struggled with it a lot, but there's a lot of dynamics that happen within our own house, and we don't want people to know about it. And so we hold up a very brave, strong front. We are the women who have it all.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, when you're having to have a dialogue, especially generational, so your parents are from a different generation, your child is from a different generation. And between those two, so much has occurred in terms of technology, in terms of travel, the way we've moved in society. I don't consider myself really from India.
Mm.
So the woman can have it all in this moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Is there any time that you feel like you have to break that front as well? That myth of the way Asians think women have to have it all, pretend you have it all?
No, you like I said, you need to have a strong communication with your
Mhm.
partner. I think also when a woman chooses a partner, you need to choose somebody that you know that you can lean on. Like I know society says like, you're getting married now to a house and you have to do whatever your husband says, or whatever husband says is right. Like I think that's one of the things that has always been put into Southeast Asian
Yeah.
woman, I think. But we have a voice of our own and we have an opinion of our own as well. So if there's something that when you get married and your husband say this is not right, you should be able to speak up for it.
But not everybody has that though. So how did you make that work for you?
I think you just have to be true to yourself. I think if
What does
as a
that mean?
no, those are I don't know. It's just like you have to be very open and honest. You've just got to be opinionated. You just got to say what you have to say. You just not gonna keep it to yourself.
In the opinionation, right? I call it in the opinionation because I understand where you're getting at. Do you take, so when you're reflecting on it or how you're going to have this dialogue, how do you navigate taking accountability and responsibility for the parts of you that you find is very vulnerable, very confronting?
That's a tough one.
I'm asking this because I go back to this, everybody says, okay, be true, right?
Yeah,
You have to be true to yourself.
yeah.
But then I'm always wondering sometimes, are you really true or are you thinking you're making the decision because of how society, because you still want to fit in to society or you want to fit in and you want to feel like you belong. So how do you look inside and saying, okay, I'm taking accountability for this before I speak with my partner?
No, you just have to have clear goals from before. Even though society tells you one thing and deep down inside you're like, no, I don't think this is right, even though society will tell you that this is right. I think I really think you've really got to be true to yourself. You've really, like as I said, you got to set those boundaries from before itself. Like somebody should really know that this is what I want and this is where I want to go. And whether society tells you, no, don't do it this way or don't do it that way. Like, for example, when a child is born, there's a lot
Mhm.
of, they say it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, you could have a lot of opinionated women kind to tell you how you're supposed to raise your child.
Mhm.
But you're the mother. You're one person. And at the end of the day, none of those people are going to be around your child 24/7. So it's nice for them to give you the advice, but at the end of the day, you need to be like, okay, she said this. I think none of them make sense. I'll just do whatever Google says.
Google, huh? So you'll take advice over Google. Okay.
or whatever parenting books you've read or whatsoever, you'd be like, okay, I'll just do whatever they say, and then you just go with the flow. That's one thing, like that. Those are things that I think, and I'm pretty sure a lot of young, girls nowadays with kids would agree with me. Like their moms or their mother-in-laws would tell them, like, no, you're not supposed to do this, or you can't be, you got to be a bit more strict with your child or something like that. And I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's just gonna do what they think is right.
Okay, but
And
I'm thinking devil's advocate here, right? So you have you have parents who give you advice, and sometimes we don't want to take it because we also want to have our own advice. Then there's tons of books out there. I mean, there's like so much books overload. How do you? I mean, you have to reconcile between the two, between advice from someone else, advice from books, advice from family, and then you have to, between all that noise, listen to yourself.
yeah,
So, at what point do you feel that voice within you? That's the one that you're like, yeah, that's how I'm going to take it. I
I,
mean, how do you
I,
describe that?
I think for me, it's like when you, okay, there, I agree, there are tons of books. You also have to have the time to read the books. And, for somebody like me, sometimes, if I can read a book, I would just rather read a fictional book and be like, okay, my Colleen Hoover, and I'm done with it. Than rather like about parenting. But you can put books aside, but like, for example, simple things like scrolling through Instagram. Like half the time everyone's scrolling through Instagram, so you can follow a lot of these great advices and things that people listing on Instagram. So I would just go through them and I'll be
Which one do
like,
you recommend?
there is actually one lady, and I really recommend, she's really good. She's called Dr. Siggy, Siggie,
Hmm.
and she is really good. Like, she has from toddler tantrums to eating habits, potty training, but then she goes really a lot more. She'd be like, what if your child bit another child in school? What are you going to do about it? How do you, like, talk
Hmm.
about it? And so what I'm trying to say is that you have to see like what makes the most sense. The answers, like she puts proper question answers, how to reply. Like literally, this happened. What do you normally say
Hmm.
and what you should be saying? So you should really, like do the research, do the proper research and see what works for you the best. And like for me, I resonate with her the best. I really like her stuff on so that's where I feel like, okay, if there's sometimes something happen where I go like, shit, I should have behaved differently with Neil, because that happens as well, right? Like, something happens and you will lash out, and you should have, after that you think like, maybe I was a bit too harsh, with him. I should have done it differently. I go to her page and I see quite a lot of stuff. You find your voice within from the
Hmm.
research that you find and see which one you can relate the most with.
And then comes the added layer, mompreneur. You are very much your own businesswoman. You run a business out of one country, and the
Few
business. So how do you navigate?
planning, properly have a proper day plan. Like, okay, from the moment you wake up, from the moment you prepare lunch boxes and stuff like that, drop your child to school. For me, it's very easy. I drop my child to school. I go to the gym, I come back, I get ready, I go to the office just for a little while, and then it's time to pick him up again. So then I go pick him up, drop him home, like spend like 10 minutes and be like, okay, mommy's got to go to office. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, bye, see you. And literally, like, he knows, right? He knows, like, mommy's going to the office. And then I go to the office until maybe 4, 5, no, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And I get home on time, just in time for him to go to bed. And then I put him to bed.
Mhm.
And, that's how my day goes. Weekends are purely for him. Like, it's only if there's something really, really important that needs to be picked up, I will put in the work in. But weekends are really like for Neil.
Mhm. I heard there were a lot of moms who felt very guilty. There's always that guilty syndrome that happens in the beginning.
Yeah.
How do you navigate the guilt? I mean, do you still have that guilt, or
I
does it go
never
away?
honest
Or
for but for me, honestly, I never had that guilt. No,
okay.
no, I never did. I know also quite a lot of mom that, like, even like sending kids to daycare was a discussion. Like, at what age do you send your kids to daycare? So that the moms can have some time off, or moms can go and work. Coming from Europe, and I think in the UK as well,
Mhm.
they send their kids to daycare pretty early. I think from 3 months or 6 months old, they
Yeah,
already
that's what
send
I
their
heard.
kids to daycare. But like, for example, in the Middle East and in Asia, Southeast Asia, it's like a taboo to even think of sending your kids at 3 months old or 6 months old to the daycare. It's because they're like, no, but they are too young. And yeah, but you're teaching them, for them to be independent. They're socializing, their social skills are so much more. And then a lot of parents, moms, have the guilt, right? Like, how can I leave my child at a daycare? He's at such a small age. But for me, I always thought of it as like the social aspect of it. You drop your child at the daycare, your child interacts with a lot of kids. It's great for them.
I'm just thinking back on my clients I used to have who would
Mm,
run, come for to yoga with their kids,
mm.
and the kids get sick unexpectedly from 0 to 5. The illness,
Oh,
getting sick
yeah,
happens. The
yeah. But I tell everybody, you put your child to daycare. Make sure for the first 1 year, one
Mhm.
year of the daycare, the first year, half the time they're going to be home. Maybe even three-quarters of the time they're going
So
to
how
be
you
home.
balance your work with that?
That's the good part of being entrepreneur. You can work at any time of the day. I'm not in the 9 to 5, right? So
Mhm.
if it was time that he was sick, then it was like, okay, we gotta take care of the child first, and then
Mhm.
and
Were
then
you?
you do
Mhm.
the work in the night or in the evening.
Did you ever feel exhausted, or ever stop and say, "Why am I doing all this?" Or not?
When Neil was growing up and when he, like with all the things that happened, no, I think I was pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We were pretty okay. Maybe also it had to do that when he was like in this whole growing up part, COVID also came in between. So half the time
Right.
he was home as well,
Mhm.
right? So that could be one thing. But no, my advice to everybody is put your kids to daycare and the first 1 year, or work part time. Like if you don't want to work full time,
Mhm.
work part time. Like I also give this advice to stay at home moms because a lot of people then say, why should I put my kid in a daycare? But if I am a stay at home mom, I can take care of my kid
Good question.
myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you can, but your child is not going to get the same social skills from being at home as compared to when they go to a daycare.
Do you find that sometimes also when he comes home with, when you go to school, you also pick up stuff, you pick up habits, and then you come home and then you're just wondering, how am I going to manage this? What do you suggest then? I mean,
Yes.
that's always the hard question, isn't it?
No,
How do
that
you?
is very interesting because I'm actually realizing that now. Because now I feel like he's in this age where between I think between 4 and 5, they really pick a lot of habits and they really see what other kids do.
Mhm.
I've actually seen this with Neil himself. Like all of a sudden, I noticed he was biting his nails, and I know exactly from which friend it came. So I was like, all the moms in the class, during drop off or pickup, you always have a chat with them, or you go for a coffee with them, and then you start talking about, like he started doing this. He goes like, oh yeah, I know, it's probably from my son. Oh, I'm so sorry. So when I noticed it, I picked on it right away with Neil, and I told him like, listen, I just gave him example. I said, you're gonna get fingernails like Gruffalo. Do you want
Mhm.
that? And he goes like, no. I mean, I did have to threaten a little. I,
Is that the Indian threatening?
the Indian threatening. It was like, I'm going to put green chilies. I'm going to put red chilies on your hand. No, but I told him, I was like, I just kept on repeating, telling him that you shouldn't do it. It's really not nice. It's not good for your health. It will not be good. Like this. And then all of a sudden he stopped. He just stopped. So I was actually quite impressed how that went.
Do you suggest, would you think about if you had another child, would it have been as easy or not?
No, it wouldn't have been easy. No, no. I know for a fact that if I had a second child, I don't know if I would still be able to work as much as I can work now with a
Do you ever
second child.
find that you have to pick and choose between your work and your life?
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
manage that?
I just decide what is important at that moment. Priorities.
Mhm.
Again, if you have to like see which is higher.
But were there any moments that in those opportunities and you did have to pick and choose? Do you ever regret not taking one?
I don't think ever such an opportunity came that I'd be like, okay, I can't do this because this or something like that. I mean, there have been just instances where you plan a meeting or you schedule a trip, for
Mhm.
example, and then your child gets sick, so you can't do that trip anymore, so you miss that meeting. Where we're more like, well, too bad. Sorry, send me the notes. Let me know how it goes.
Do you find now with having the accessibility of technology has made your life easier as a mom to be able to have it all in that way?
So I do think that with having Zoom calls, Teams and stuff like that, work from home, I think it's great, but I still think when you have a child around, you're still not being able to work properly from home as going to the office. So the technology is great. I think it's
Mhm.
great that we can do Teams call. Of course, I think it's great for you don't have to travel or you don't have to, like you can skip the whole traveling part or whatsoever. But when it comes to choosing, do I go to the office and work versus do I stay at home and work just to be around my child? You're not going to be as productive as give me 2 hours, let me go to the office and be very productive 2 hours, than
Mhm.
8 hours non productive at home.
So it's really quality over quantity.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because when your child is at home, it's, they're going to come here and they'll be like, I mean, you've seen all these videos, right? The BBC video when the guy comes in and this and that. And it just loses your concentration.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great for them to be there. Or even though if they're in the other room, you're somehow you have the subconscious mind is just going to listen at all their conversation, right? When your child is having with whoever he's having, and then you'll hear something and you're like in between of your work when you need to concentrate, you're like, oh no, Neil, you're not supposed to do that.
So that leads to the one thing when you say quality over quantity, self care.
Yeah,
I feel sometimes we are as women we're so much into the self care.
too much,
Oh, you think too much? All right. So
too much.
tell me how you, like I said, women have it all. How do you take care of you with being a wife, mom, business, social life, also because there's social life with you and your partner? How do you take care of you?
I put timeouts from everybody.
You
So I
do.
go and have a coffee all by myself. I just for half an hour or like 45 minutes. If you need a break from everybody, I just go at a coffee shop and just have a coffee in peace.
All right. If people don't have that luxury,
Go for a walk. Go watch a movie alone. I think people are scared to be alone. I've noticed that as well. I because I remember in the days that I used to study in Holland, I would go out to a restaurant and eat alone. I don't
mhm.
care. And honestly, it's the best thing you can do. Just go to a restaurant, table for one, please. And I remember I used to tell this to some of my friends, and I would be like, you should try it. She goes like, no, are you crazy? I'm not going to go alone. I'm like, why not?
I love eating alone. I love taking. I mean, I'm a hermit, so I spend a lot of my time alone as well. So I get that part.
Yeah.
So you do take time out and you schedule it in, basically.
You have to schedule it in. It's something I learned from you and you.
Yeah, I'm always going to tell you to become friends with your mind in the best ways alone, but you know. So now that when you're moving forward, what were the biggest challenges you face? At least I think about this. When we think about Asian families, it's not just me, husband and child, or it's
Extended family,
extended
everything.
family as well. And that in itself takes up also quite a bit of time. And I know you're living far from your parents as well. So that's another thing that you also add on. How do you manage with that?
Well,
How do
that's
you
where
work with that?
technology comes in, and that's great, right?
I think so.
Yeah, that's I think. I mean, imagine like 30 years ago, we had to like wait for a phone call or something like that, right?
Yeah, go to a phone booth and look for call it this hour.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember. I remember hearing about those days. So
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
think technology makes a big difference?
Easier, very easy, big difference. I speak to my parents every day. Neil gets to see his grandparents every day over the video. It's not something that when I grow up, I would be like, oh, can I just see my grandfather over a video?
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't available back then.
No.
So when you look at all of that, you think women can have it all, or do you think there's some sacrifices that need to be made? Because
Compromises. Yeah, maybe sacrifice, compromise. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
so what
think,
would be a sacrifice and when would be a compromise, for example? Because I think they're a bit different, but maybe I'm off.
I think with sacrifice, like you have to, there's always something like, okay, you always think for your family first.
Mhm.
In case of woman first, in case of yourself first. That's always like a thing, you know. I don't know, somehow we women are just, it's just in our genes of that we do that, I guess.
So that'd be non-negotiable. You'll always think family first.
You always think family first. Yeah. Yeah. You always think family first. And but like I said, at the end of the day, you've got to have a good support system. And your support system is basically you and your partner. For me, it's that your partner is supposed to understand.
So not the women tribes that everybody talks about?
The women tribe is there, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, are they gonna pay your bills? Are they gonna help you?
To me, no.
Yeah, exactly. Like when something goes wrong or whatsoever, you need to make these decisions and stuff like that together with your partner. You and your partner's got to set clear goals and values and what's important for you as a family.
So moving into 2024, this is fresh month, fresh voice, new voices. How could would you suggest women who want to have it all? Because a lot of women also in leadership last year, they either resigned from their posts, they've burnt out, they found it too much. What could you suggest for them to do in this month that could help them, that can support them not to get to that stage?
For them to just plan time out for themselves as well. So that me time that we all talk about, like it's great to say, oh, okay, this is my me time. Just schedule that in.
Okay, but what would make the me time fulfilling for that? Because you can do me time and then go shopping and run errands. There's some people think that's me time.
Be alone. Think. Write down. Journaling. Go to the gym. Got to do something that you think is good for yourself.
So, and how much time would that need? 45 minutes, 30 minutes?
I think even if it's 30 minutes a day, even 15 minutes a day, if you can read a book in silence for 15 minutes a day, you would feel a lot better in silence with nobody around, nobody bothering you.
So it's really about taking the time out and then filling it with nothing to do with the family.
Yes. Yes.
Do you manage to switch off easy with no work also?
Yeah.
In those 45 minutes?
Yeah. Yep. Just put off all your notifications on your phone.
That's a good one as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming online. It was really a pleasure. And I'm grateful for sharing, getting to know, can women have it all? But giving me an inspiration to say, yes, women can have it all. It's all about in the planning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's all about the planning. If we don't have a proper planning, and the technology has helped us with all of that. So
thank you for coming on today's podcast. It was
Thank
really
you.
nice to befriend your mind about moms.
Exactly. Thank you.